Hello, welcome. My name is Dr. Kamani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Today we're going to be talking about Black women healing from toxic work environments and stages of grief. So we've already started this conversation and we're going to continue the conversation. First I want to say welcome to this conversation. Welcome to my channel, Lifting Us We Climb Consulting Wellness Services, in which we focus on supporting the manifestation of healing individually and collectively. So if you may have watched the other videos, we've talked about Black women healing from toxic work environments and stages of grief. And the reason that I'm talking about it is that, number one, as Black women, we often do not have a place or a space to be able to talk about and to acknowledge that we're in toxic work environments. And so I want to talk from the perspective of let's give voice to our experiences, because we recognize and we know that when we are silenced, that is a form of oppression and it's harmful to us. The other thing that I wanted to be very clear in this conversation is that when I talk about these experiences, that we are not victims, we are victors, in the sense that we are able to acknowledge what happens to us and we are able to continue to thrive just as our ancestors have. So I wanted to ground us in that. So in terms of the stages of grief and toxic work environments, sometimes we feel a little confused when we decide to leave toxic work environments, or we have left. And so we don't understand why we don't feel, jubilant, why we don't feel relaxed, why we don't feel all these different things liberated when we leave these environments. And many times that's because we have not really recognized that we are going through a grief process, or we have gone through a grief process in relation to toxic work environments. So the grief may be, when we come into a job, we generally have an enthusiasm about having this job and enthusiasm about what we may accomplish in this job. And we come to find out that things are not as we may have expected. And so that is the grief that I'm talking about. So the grief of that. And also the grief in terms of maybe people you've worked with, maybe those individuals you thought that they were your friends and it turned out that they weren't. Or those that you trusted, you found out that they betrayed your trust in some ways. So that is where the grief comes from. So in that regard, it may be you may have actually formed friendships at your job, and you may miss not being, around these individuals, right, on a daily basis. So there's a lot of grief that may come, but we many times don't acknowledge that. So we've already talked about the various stages of grief. So the first two stages of grief. And as a reminder, stages of grief are not linear. We can go back and forth to the different stages. So you can go to 1, 2, 3. So it just depends, right? So it's not the same for everyone. So we've already talked about denial. So denial in the sense of not recognizing the degree of toxicity that is often in these toxic work environments support an environment of toxicity. So it's generally not just one person or a few people, it's a whole work culture that supports the toxicity. So it's important to recognize that. And also we might have some denial in not recognizing the degree to which being in these toxic work environments may be harming us, right? So denial. The next stage that we talked about was anger. So we know that, comments or discussions or any type of reference to anger for Black women, that really relates to the stereotype many times that we feel that we have to counter or work against. So the stereotype of the angry Black woman. And I just want to just say to all of us that we are okay and we are within our rights to be angry when we've been harmed. Okay, so anger is the second stage. So today we're going to be talking about bargaining. So bargaining in the extent of at your job, you may be in a position where you're constantly having to prove your worth, right? So legitimize your worth. So that can be very demoralizing and demeaning. So you're constantly doing that, and you start questioning yourself over time when you have to keep doing that. So you, on some level, say, okay, well, I'm going to bargain with myself, and I know I'm doing a good job, so I'll just go into this job and I'll just focus on just doing my job. But here's the thing. This is the mind shift, right? Or the mind challenge that we experience, is that many times we're already doing our jobs. We're already doing our jobs to a high standard. And so we think, well, I'm already doing my job, but I'll just keep focusing. I'll just try harder. But we need to give ourselves grace and recognize that we're doing our jobs at a high level, even amidst all the job trauma that we're going through, and even amidst the psychological warfare that's causing us to question ourselves, right? So I remember a previous guest that we had on the series, and Dr. Erica McKinnis, and she was talking about being in a workplace where her supervisor was questioning her writing skills and really criticizing her writing skills for these legal reports. However, the attorneys who were receiving the legal reports praised the reports. They really liked it, right? So looking at ways that these situations of bargaining and having to prove ourselves and validate ourselves, how that can then erode our own sense of confidence, and we might start questioning ourselves. Okay, so when we think about bargaining and we think about all the stages of grief, it's very important that we really are mindful and intentional about healing as well. Okay, so in terms of the healing steps or strategies that I want to offer to you, number one, know your worth. Never, ever, ever negotiate your worth with anyone. Okay, so if people act like they don't recognize your worth, it might be a good time to question if this is really the best place for you, because you want to be in a professional environment where you feel affirmed and that people are really helping to promote and support your growth, your professional growth. Number two, it's important to really surround yourself around people who really have your back, who you can really trust. So I would say, particularly those outside of the workplace, people that you can really talk to honestly about what you're going through, because a lot of times these individuals might be the ones who come to you and say, you know what, you need to stop. You need to stop trying to prove yourself to people. I notice the toll that it's taking on you. So having those supportive people around you. And number three is seek support in whatever way you may need it. So if it's friends, family, prayer, if it's going to therapy, what are some ways that you can get support so that this issue, this trauma, doesn't have a negative impact on you physically and psychologically and even spiritually? So really recognizing that, and that recognizing that when we are in these situations, healing is essential for us to be able to really be able to identify what are our options. So when we think about trauma, many times we feel trapped in situations, we feel stuck. But when we start thinking about our options, it feels liberating. So in what ways can we liberate ourselves by thinking about and following up on possible options that we may have? So those are the three healing tips that I wanted to offer for today. In summary, we had an overview again about the stages of grief. We went into a more deeper conversation about bargaining. Next time that we meet, I will be here again next Monday. I'll be talking about depression, which is the next stage of grief. So we'll be talking about ways that depression might look, in terms of dealing with a toxic workplace. And I'll also be offering some healing tips. I want to let you know that I do have a few slots open for a job coaching program that I have for Black women. As I've mentioned before, we got to get our minds right so that we are in the best position to be in professions, to be in jobs that really affirm us and support our professional growth. So if you would like to see more videos, please comment, subscribe to this channel. If you would like to receive notifications when I do my next video, please turn on the notifications. And I want you to remember, everything we talked about today, but I want you to remember that no one deserves to be unhappy in a workplace. No one deserves to dread waking up due to your workplace. You, me, we deserve better. Okay, so again, thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you again next Monday. and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.